Dr. Ryan Mitchell walked through the sterile corridors of St. Catherine's Medical Center with the same measured pace he had maintained for the past 3 years. His surgical scrubs were always perfectly pressed, his hands always clean, and his expression always unreadable. But there was something about Dr. Mitchell that made everyone uncomfortable. He never spoke. His hand saved lives every day, but no one knew why this brilliant surgeon never said a word. Before we dive into this incredible story that will change how you see silent strength forever, I need your help to make sure this story reaches everyone who needs to hear it. Hit that subscribe button and give this video a like. Your support helps us share these powerful stories of hidden courage and sacrifice. Trust me, you'll want to stay until the end of this one. The operating room at St. Catherine's was a symphony of controlled chaos. Monitors beeped steadily, ventilators hummed their mechanical rhythm, and surgical instruments clinked against metal trays. In the center of it all stood Dr. Ryan Mitchell, his hands moving with surgical precision that bordered on artistry. "Scalpel," called out Dr. Sarah Chen, the attending physician overseeing the operation. Ryan's hand moved toward the instrument tray without hesitation, selecting the correct blade and passing it to her with fluid motion. No words, no acknowledgement, just perfect surgical coordination. The resident doctors watched in fascination and growing frustration. Dr. Michael Torres, a second-year resident, whispered to his colleague, "3 months I've been on his service, and I've never heard him say a single word. Not one." "Maybe he's mute," suggested Dr. Amanda Walsh, adjusting her surgical mask. "No." Dr. Torres shook his head. "I've seen him clear his throat. He makes sounds during procedures, like when he needs suction or when something's not right. He just doesn't talk." Dr. Chen paused in her work, glancing at Ryan. She had worked with him longer than anyone else at St. Catherine's, nearly 3 years since he had transferred from Walter Reed Army Medical Center. His credentials were impeccable, board certified in trauma surgery, cardiovascular surgery, and neurosurgery. His surgical success rate was the highest in the hospital. But his silence remained a mystery that frustrated staff and patients alike. "Dr. Mitchell," Dr. Chan addressed him directly, "what's your assessment of the patient's condition?" Ryan looked up from the surgical site, his gray eyes meeting hers for a brief moment. He held up 2 fingers, then pointed to his watch, then made a small circular motion with his hand. Dr. Chen had learned to interpret his gestures over the years. "2 hours, and you think we need to check circulation again," she translated. Ryan nodded once, then returned his attention to the patient. The surgery continued in relative silence, punctuated only by the necessary medical communications between Dr. Chen and the other staff members. Ryan's hands never wavered, never hesitated. When he needed an instrument, he would simply extend his hand in the proper direction, and somehow, the nurses always knew exactly what he required. After the operation, the team gathered in the break room. Dr. Torres couldn't contain his curiosity any longer. "Dr. Chen, what's his deal? I mean, Dr. Mitchell is obviously brilliant, but the silence is unsettling." Dr. Chan removed her surgical cap, her dark hair spilling out in waves. "He's the best surgeon I've ever worked with, Mike. His diagnostic skills are incredible, his surgical technique is flawless, and I've never seen him make an error in judgment." "But why doesn't he talk?" pressed Dr. Walsh. "That's not our business," Dr. Chen replied firmly. "What matters is that he saves lives. Every day." Dr. Torres leaned back in his chair. "The patients find it weird too. Mrs. Patterson in room 314 asked me if her surgeon was mentally disturbed, because he wouldn't speak to her before her procedure." "He communicates," Dr. Chen defended. "He uses gestures, he writes notes when necessary. He makes sure patients understand their procedures." "Through interpreters," Dr. Walsh pointed out. "You, me, the nurses. He never speaks directly to patients." Dr. Chan stood up, clearly ending the conversation. "Dr. Mitchell is a professional. He does his job exceptionally well. That's all any of us need to know." If this story moved you, remember to like, subscribe, and share it with someone who needs to hear about the power of silent strength. In the comments, tell us about a time when someone's actions spoke louder than their words. And remember, heroes don't always announce themselves. Sometimes they work quietly, healing the world one patient at a time. But the residents weren't satisfied. Over the following weeks, they began to pay closer attention to their silent colleague, trying to solve the mystery of his silence. Dr. Torres noticed that Ryan always arrived early and stayed late, reviewing patient charts with meticulous care. He wrote detailed notes in perfect handwriting, documenting every aspect of surgical procedures and post-operative care. Dr. Walsh observed that Ryan seemed to have an uncanny ability to anticipate surgical needs. He would prepare instruments before they were requested, adjust lighting before anyone realized it was needed, and position himself in exactly the right place at exactly the right time. The nurses had their own observations. Sarah Martinez, the head surgical nurse, mentioned to Dr. Chen that Ryan always chose the most challenging cases. "It's like he's drawn to the procedures that other surgeons might hesitate to take on," she said. The mystery deepened when Dr. Patricia Hoffman, the hospital administrator, mentioned that Ryan had specifically requested to work only trauma cases. "Most surgeons want variety," she explained to Dr. Chen during a staff meeting. "Dr. Mitchell only wants emergency surgery, trauma patients, life or death situations. It's unusual." 3 months into the resident speculation, everything changed. It was 11:47 p.m. on a Tuesday when the emergency call came in. A massive multi-vehicle accident on Interstate 95 had resulted in 7 critical patients being rushed to St. Catharines. The hospital activated its mass casualty protocol, calling in all available surgeons. Dr. Chen was scrubbing in when she realized the scope of the disaster. 7 patients, all critical. Multiple trauma, several requiring immediate surgery. "We need every operating room." The emergency department was controlled chaos. Paramedics wheeled in stretcher after stretcher, each patient more critical than the last. Dr. Ryan Mitchell was already in surgical scrubs, moving between patients with his characteristic silent assessment. "Dr. Mitchell," Dr. Chen called out, "take or 3. Multiple trauma, possible internal bleeding." Ryan nodded and moved toward his assigned patient. But as he passed the other trauma bays, he paused at each one, his trained eye quickly assessing the severity of injuries. Trauma Bay 2, he stopped completely. The patient was a young man, maybe 25, with severe chest trauma. The attending physician, Dr. James Rodriguez, was struggling with the case. "Possible cardiac tamponade," Dr. Rodriguez was saying to his team. "Blood pressure dropping, heart rate elevated." Ryan stepped closer, his eyes fixed on the patient's monitor readings. Without invitation, he moved to the patient's side and placed his hands on the young man's chest, feeling for the subtle signs that monitors couldn't detect. "Dr. Mitchell," Dr. Rodriguez said with slight irritation, "this is my patient." Ryan looked up, his gray eyes intense. He pointed to the monitor, then to his own neck, mimicking a cutting motion. Dr. Rodriguez frowned in confusion. "I don't understand what you're trying to tell me." Ryan's frustration was visible. He grabbed a pen and quickly wrote on the patient's chart, "Tension pneumothorax, immediate decompression needed." Dr. Rodriguez read the note, then looked at the patient's chest. The X-ray didn't show. Ryan was already moving, grabbing a large bore needle from the emergency cart. His hands moved with lightning speed, locating the precise anatomical landmark and inserting the needle between the patient's ribs. The effect was immediate. The patient's blood pressure stabilized, his breathing improved, and his color began to return to normal. "Jesus," Dr. Rodriguez whispered. "How did you see that when the X-ray missed it?" Ryan was already moving to the next patient, but Dr. Torres had witnessed the entire interaction. "Did you see that? He saved that guy's life in 30 seconds. The night continued with Ryan moving between operating rooms, assisting with the most critical cases. His silent presence became a source of comfort for the overwhelmed medical team. Wherever he appeared, lives were saved. By 6 a.m., all 7 patients had been stabilized. The surgical team gathered in the break room, exhausted but successful. Ryan sat apart from the others, reviewing patient charts as always. Dr. Chen approached him. "Ryan, what you did tonight? That diagnosis in Trauma Bay 2. How did you know?" Ryan looked up at her, then reached for a pen and paper. He wrote slowly, as if the words were difficult to form, "I've seen it before. Many times. In medical school? Dr. Torres asked, having overheard. Ryan shook his head. He wrote again, Afghanistan. The room fell silent. Ryan continued writing, his hand moving steadily across the paper. I was a combat surgeon. Forward Operating Base Chapman. 2018 to 2019. Trauma surgery under fire. I learned to diagnose without equipment, to operate without ideal conditions. Dr. Walsh leaned forward. You're a veteran? Ryan nodded, then continued writing. March 15, 2019. Improvised explosive device. Direct hit on the medical tent. I was operating on a soldier when it happened. The residents exchanged glances, beginning to understand. Ryan's next words made everything clear. The explosion damaged my vocal cords. Shrapnel injury. The surgeons at Landstuhl tried to repair them, but... He paused in his writing, then continued. I can make sounds, but speaking clearly, it's difficult. Painful. The room was completely quiet except for the scratching of Ryan's pen. I chose silence rather than struggle with words. My hands still worked perfectly. That's what matters. Dr. Chun felt tears forming in her eyes. Ryan, we had no idea. Ryan wrote one final note. I didn't want pity. I wanted to save lives. That's all I've ever wanted. Dr. Torres spoke up. How many soldiers did you operate on? Ryan looked at him for a long moment, then wrote, 347 soldiers. I remember every one. The weight of that number settled over the room. 347 lives saved in a war zone. And now, countless more in the safety of St. Catherine's Medical Center. The young man tonight, Dr. Rodriguez said, having joined the group. The one with the pneumothorax. You saved his life because you've seen that injury before. Ryan nodded. He wrote, Private First Class Marcus Webb. Same injury. Forward Operating Base Chapman. February 2019. He lived. The story began to make sense. The silent surgeon who chose the most challenging cases, who never hesitated in emergency situations, who could diagnose conditions that others missed, he was drawing from experience that no civilian surgeon could match. Over the following days, word spread quietly through the hospital about Dr. Mitchell's background. The mystery that had frustrated staff for 3 years was replaced by profound respect. Patients began to understand that their silent surgeon wasn't cold or unfriendly. He was carrying the weight of 347 soldiers he had saved, and the trauma of nearly dying while serving his country. Dr. Sarah Martinez made a small change in how she introduced Ryan to patients. This is Dr. Mitchell, your surgeon. He's one of our most experienced trauma surgeons, and he served our country as a combat physician. He may not speak much, but his hands will take excellent care of you. The response from patients changed dramatically. Instead of feeling uncomfortable with his silence, they felt honored to be treated by someone who had served. Ryan noticed the change but continued his work as before, with quiet competence and unwavering dedication. However, he began to write brief notes to patients, explaining procedures and offering reassurance through written words. 6 months after the night of the mass casualty event, Dr. Chan found Ryan in the break room after a particularly challenging surgery. She sat down beside him. I wanted to thank you, she said, for trusting us with your story. Ryan looked up from his patient charts. He reached for a pen and wrote, Thank you for not treating me differently. The residents have learned so much from you, Dr. Chen continued. Not just surgical techniques, but about dedication, about overcoming obstacles. Ryan wrote, I learned more from them. About acceptance. Have you considered speech therapy? The hospital would cover it. Ryan paused in his writing, considering the question carefully. Then he wrote, Maybe. But miscellance serves a purpose. It makes me listen better. Observe more carefully. Sometimes the best communication happens without words. Dr. Chen smiled. That's very wise. Ryan added one more line. 347 soldiers taught me that every life is precious. Every surgery matters. Words are less important than actions. The conversation was interrupted by an emergency page. Multiple trauma patients incoming. Ryan immediately stood up, gathering his charts as they walked toward the operating rooms. Dr. Chen realized that Ryan's silence wasn't a limitation, it was a choice. A choice born from trauma but refined into strength. In the operating room, Ryan's hands moved with the same precise skill they always had. But now, the surgical team understood the weight those hands carried, the lives they had saved, and the sacrifice behind the silence. Dr. Torres, now in his final year of residency, had learned to read Ryan's gestures as clearly as spoken words. "He's requesting a smaller retractor," he would tell the nurses. "He wants us to check the patient's blood pressure again." Ryan had become not just a surgeon, but a teacher. His silence had taught the entire surgical team about the power of observation, the importance of precision, and the value of dedication over self-promotion. Late one evening, after a successful surgery on a car accident victim, Ryan found a note left on his desk. It was from the patient's family. "Dr. Mitchell, we know you don't speak much, but your actions spoke volumes. Thank you for saving our son's life. We are honored that someone who served our country also served our family." Ryan read the note several times, then carefully folded it and placed it in his pocket. He picked up his pen and wrote a response, which he left for Dr. Chen to deliver. "Your son reminded me why I became a surgeon. Every patient is someone's child, someone's future. Thank you for trusting me with his life." As the months passed, Ryan's reputation grew beyond St. Catherine's. Medical students requested rotations specifically to learn from the silent surgeon. They came expecting to learn advanced surgical techniques, but they left understanding something more profound about service, sacrifice, and the different ways strength can manifest. Dr. Walsh, now a chief resident, often told new students, "Dr. Mitchell will teach you that excellence doesn't require explanation. Skills speak louder than words. And sometimes, the most powerful stories are told through action, not speech." Ryan continued his work, saving lives with the same steady hands that had served on a battlefield thousands of miles away. His silence remained, but it was no longer a mystery. It was a reminder of the cost of service, the weight of responsibility, and the quiet heroism that exists in operating rooms across the country. The young trauma surgeon who had lost his voice in Afghanistan had found a different way to communicate, through perfect surgical technique, unwavering dedication, and the countless lives he saved, one silent procedure at a time. His hands saved lives every day, and now everyone knew why this brilliant surgeon never needed to say a word.